When I was writing the script for the Shadowrun 4E hacking video, I was making a lot of comparisons to real-world technology, stuff that exists today but was in its infancy at the time the game was first written. I cut a lot of those comparisons out, but like some kind of mimetic or semiotic specter, it followed me when I kept making jokes about air fryers. The comparisons I was originally making kinda saddened me, to be honest, and I don't feel like they added much to the script for how long it made it. So, I'm compiling them into an addendum right here. In Shadowrun 4th Edition, every device not only is connected to the internet, but makes the infrastructure for the internet, using mesh networking. The more devices there are, the more paths data can take to reach its destination, and the more stable the internet connection is. This is to remind the player that Shadowrun is a work of fiction. In our world, more devices does not translate to more network connectivity. They don't assist in reinforcing the network, but instead add more traffic that your router has to figure out what to do with and slow everything down. It's partly why network engineering is its own field in computer science. Most enterprise-scale computer networks used by businesses want a network that is specifically tailored to their needs, which would entail setting up the hardware switches in such a way that optimizes the flow of network traffic, specifically ensuring that high-priority traffic goes out and through the internet the fastest. For example, consider a business supply company that has a division doing computer salvaging and refurbishing. Their network should prioritize the traffic going through the port for relational database operations, so that way their inventory is kept up to date as parts are collected and cataloged. And they should probably lower the priority for any traffic going through their port for hypertext transfer protocols, since HR is spending their time shopping for useless trinkets and gewgaws on a certain internet retailer's website is probably not all that important to business operations. Augmented reality, as it appears in Shadowrun, is kind of a heads-up display. Like you're in a video game, it shows you your ammo, anything that someone's tagging for you, yada yada yada. Meaning, there is a plausible use for those ridiculous visors you often see people wearing in the cyberpunk aesthetic. I mentioned in the main video that it's not much more different than the failed Google Glass, or even the more ridiculous-looking Apple Vision, because several $1,000s for a bulky pair of goggles that will let me use my phone while not having my vision completely obstructed is clearly the way of the future. Sticking your phone in your pocket when you need to pay attention to the world around you? That is so passé. But the real-world equivalent that sticks out to me when AR gets mentioned is some of the more novel entertainment applications, like the early Nintendo 3DS games that would react to the camera seeing certain images and drawing the play area around those images. I'm also reminded of a sci-fi and fantasy expo at my hometown that used an AR app to give some extra content behind some exhibits that they had displayed. You look at the exhibit through the app in a smartphone, and it shows you some extra content, like a little extra presentation or an automated tour guide. I also recall that Marvel Comics had an app like that at one time that would link you to extra content when you scanned certain images that were printed in their books. Though, these things are often just that, a novelty. Marvel's app didn't add much to the comics, so I stopped using it and just enjoyed the colorful pictures and snarky dialogue. And I didn't have a lot of physical space to actually walk circles around my table when the Tetris pieces were displayed there. And both of those uses eventually fell out of vogue. One piece of tabletop RPG trivia I will never not bring up, especially when it comes to the subject of hacking in games of pretend, is the Steve Jackson Secret Service raid. Because, let's face it, fictional media does not portray hacking correctly, which might be for the better, especially since in our real world, everything is connected to Wi-Fi, controlled through an app in our smartphones, etc., etc. Those are just security vulnerabilities waiting to happen. And the last thing we need is somebody getting adequate know-how on how to mess with those things from watching some TV shows or the like. Because there was once a time, back in the 1990s, when Steve Jackson Games was writing a cyberpunk book for GURPS, and It led to the United States Secret Service raiding their offices under the pretense that Steve Jackson was writing manuals on how to engage in criminal activity using computers. But don't take my word for it. Steve Jackson Games has it documented on their own website, sjgames.com/ss.